One way to create a report in Insight is to use an existing template as your base. To do that, search the folder list for the templates folder and select either the landscape or portrait template depending on how you want your report laid out. Make a copy of the template, rename it, and point it to one of your custom folders. When you do that, click Save, and that report will now be in your folder. From here, you can click Edit, and you will be directed to an editable window for this report or template. So you can see here that my formatting is already set up, or the page layout formatting is already set up. I've got my page numbers set here in the page footer. I have a report footer section, the detail section, which is where you'll insert your data fields, and then the page header, where you'll put your column headings, the report title, and things like that. So now all I have to do is place the data in the report. To do that, I'll use the formatting toolbar at the top of the screen. The first thing we're going to do is come in and rename our report. So this is your formatting options button or report options button. I'm going to click rename, and I'll just give this a name. Promise to pay report with collector. I'm going to select OK. Now at this point I can go back into my report options. I could add a description to the report. And then save that. The next thing that we need to do is find the tables that hold the information we're going to need. So for that, you'll go into report options and click on categories. The categories are going to be the data tables that hold all the data fields you'll need in your report. So in an effort to make this easier for all of you, we've created a folder that's labeled New. If you go in here, you have 3 subfolders. You have a main, a sub, and then the third folder, which has a warning on it. That's because you'll hardly ever use that folder. That's for some very specific reporting. So what we'll do is we'll go to the main folder listing, and here you're going to select one main category. These categories house specific information. I'm going to select the contracts category. This category is going to include about 90% of all the information you're going to need to build a report. So if you're new to report building and you wonder where to start, contracts is a really good category to use to begin with. So you notice when I selected that, all the other options in the main folder became inactive. So now if I need more information for the report I'm going to build, I can go into my subcategory folder and select some additional categories. For this report, I'm just going to pull in the collections category because I need promise to pay information for my report, and I need to add the collector IDs because I told my report I wanted to search by collector or sort by collector. So those are the only 2 categories I'm going to need for this report. If you needed other ones, you could pull in a co-buyer table or terminations if you needed to get write-off information. So there are several subcategories here that you can use. Once I have the categories I'm going to need, I'll click OK. And at this point, you can go ahead and start building your report. Or if you have an idea of how you want your report to be sorted, and then if you have an idea of the type of filtering you want to do, you can set up your initial default sorts and filters. So to do that, you'd go into the report options menu, select sorts. It's a good idea to sort, especially if you have multiple companies, it's a good idea to sort by company code. That way, the system will pull all the information for company 1, and then it will go on to company 2, and then company 3, and so on. So company code is a good sort to have. I'm going to sort by the date sold for this one. So I would just scroll through. All of the data in the data categories is listed in alphabetical order. So I can find that. And I'm going to change that to descending order because I want the most recent sold date to appear first in my report. And then I know I need to go over to the collections category to find the collector ID. The way that you can start to figure out where to pull information from in the categories is what is it linked to. So a collector ID is not linked to a contract. It's not linked to a piece of inventory. It's not linked to a specific customer. A collector ID is linked to a collections record. So that's kind of a tip-off of what category you'll go to find the information. All right, so I've got my sorts, and I'll click OK. Now we'll go and we'll move in and do some initial filtering. I know that I'm going to filter my report by company code again. So we're sorting, but now we're filtering. And the filters for company code are good if you need to sort by only a couple companies. Maybe you have 4 companies, but you only need to pull data from 2 of them. Especially in this instance, we are doing a collections type report. So I would only need to pull from finance companies. So I could exclude my sales companies. So in order to do that, you would just come in and find the company code again and pull it over to your filter window. Now once you have that over in your filter window, you can say equals to if you only have 1 additional company. You could say is one of, and then put in multiple companies. Or you could exclude something by saying it's not equal to. So I'm just going to say equal to company 2 because I know that is my finance company. I just typed in number 2. You're welcome to use the drop arrow, and you would see the numbers listed there. So I'm going to filter by company code. I'm also going to filter by some tags because I want to exclude certain accounts from my list. So I'm going to pull over the active tags data piece, which tells you if there are tags like a bankruptcy or repo tag, things like that. So I'm going to say does not contain, and I'm just going to type in BK. I don't want any records returned that have a BK tag on them. If I have additional tags that I want to include or exclude, I can pull that active tag over again and then say group with next filter. So I don't want anything that has a BK filter or a repo on hand filter in my report. So I'll change this to does not contain. So now I'm telling the system that I want a specific company and all the records must not contain bankruptcy or repo on hand. And as you build your report, you can add or take away filters as necessary. So now we're ready to start formatting our report. What I need to do is create the field for all the data. So we've, in the templates, created columns that are equal width. They're all 20 pixels wide. If you need to insert columns, you simply left click on a column and click insert before or after. Now you'll notice when you insert that columns that you insert are going to be larger. They all default to 100 pixels. So it's fine to leave them this way if you're okay with your edit view looking different. If you want everything uniform, you can just drag over until they become the same width as the other columns in your report. And then you'll be ready with your report columns. If you start building your report and you realize that you have too many columns, you don't need that many, and it's just wasted space, you can just left click on a column and select delete, and it'll delete that column. The same thing goes for rows. If you need to add or remove rows from a section, you just left click and insert before or after. The sections in the report are broken up by headers, footers, and then the detail section. The detail section is the only section that you're going to put information in that you want returned line by line by line. With that being said, you also have to be careful when formatting, because if I added a border line to my report, if I am not careful and I add that in my detail section, I'm going to get that line returned with every record in the report. So when you're creating border lines, more than likely you're going to want those in the header or footer sections. So when I inserted the new columns, I did lose my formatting here. So to add that border line back to my header area, all I need to do is highlight the section, and I did that by selecting a cell, holding my shift button down, selecting the last cell, and then that highlights everything. I can come up here to format cells and select border, and then I can increase the thickness of the border by using the up and down arrows. If you ever need to, you can also change the color of a border line or a box around a cell. So I'll click OK, and then that's been added there. Now what we usually do is merge cells so that we can put the data in those merged cells. And to do that, you simply highlight the number of cells you want and then click merge. And then you have one big cell. Now I can put in the column header for the information I want to add to that cell. So here I'm going to add a contract number. Next to that, I'm going to put the customer's name. And I know the customer's name is longer than the contract number, so I'm going to need to highlight some additional cells or fields. So you just click a field, hold your shift button, and then merge those fields. Give your column a heading, and then move on. So the next one I'm going to do is the vehicle information. So I'm going to merge those cells. And what you'll find is that when you're building reports and you initially create your area for the data, when you preview your report, you may have to do some formatting, insert some cells, or widen some existing column cells, things like that, so your information fits on the row. What you may also find is that you are adding too much detail width-wise in your report. You have to remember we're default exporting to PDF, so you have a limited window of information that will fit on one page in a PDF document. So you may have to insert some rows or change your export type, maybe to Excel, where it doesn't matter how wide the layout of the page is, but you can figure that out when you're formatting and creating. And the great thing about this system is that you can preview all of your report edits while you're building the report. You don't have to save and then close the report and go back out and open it. You can just create something, preview it, make your edits, preview it again until you're ready to save the final draft. After the vehicle information here, I'm going to put in the date sold. So I'll merge some more cells. And then I'm going to put in the balance. Just a tip, 4 or 5 field cells usually will give you enough room to put in a date or a number. So if you have a balance or you have a date that you need, 4 or 5 cells merged together should give you enough room for that. All right, and then I'm going to put in the promise date. I'm going to put in the promise amount, and then we'll select one for the collector since we are sorting this report by collector. All right, now we have to actually go and find the data. I'm going to merge the same number of cells in my detail section that I did in my column headers so that all my data lines up. When you do this, then we're going to move into the category list on the left side of the screen. The category lists are, like I said, in alphabetical order, and you can use the drop arrow to move from category to category. They're also color-coded, which doesn't mean anything right now, but once we start adding things into the edit grid, you'll see that they also have a color-coded triangle in each data field, and then that matches one of the categories. So when you're creating a report, or especially if you're copying and editing an existing report, you can look at what's in the data fields in the edit grid, look at the color-coded triangle, and then match that to the category in the category list. And that's how you can learn where the information's coming from, or maybe where to go to pick something else for that data field. So in my contracts data table, we have separated all the data into some groups. So the first group is noted by CI and then the underscore. That's your con info table. That is going to relate to the contract. Then after that you'll have con open, which is where you'll find your payment information. Then you move into the customer data set, and after that you have inventory. And then after that there are some user-defined data fields. So the contracts category, like I said, contains about 90% of the data fields that you'll need to build a basic report. So I'm going to locate the contract number. Everything is alphabetical, so I can just scroll through my list and I will come across the contract number. Then I need the customer name. Another thing that you'll find in the categories is that one piece of data can be found in multiple categories. So I can find the customer name here if I just move over buyer, but it's also in the customer data set. And in the customer data set, you have more options. You could do the first name, full name, last name. So you can decide which you want to use, but the data can be stored in different data sets in different categories. I'm going to use the full name from the customer data set, and then I need to get vehicle information. So just like the customer name, vehicle information is also located in two data sets or two categories. In my inventory data set, I could create fields for the car year, car make, car model, and do that all separately if I wanted to. Or I could come back up to the ConInfo, and remember this is linked to contract information, which houses vehicle information. So I could come up here, and that is listed under car info. Car info is going to return year, make, and model all as one data field. So I have that. The date sold, I'll scroll down and pull that over. The balance, if I'm looking for the balance right now, then I know I need to go to ConOpen so I can look at payment information. And the balance right now would be my remaining balance. So I would scroll down to the R's and pull in remaining balance. Now you may notice I'm a click and drag person. There are several ways to get data over to these fields. You can highlight the field and then locate what you want in your data table and click add. You could highlight the field and then double click on the data field and it would pull over there. Or you can click and drag. So there are several ways to get your data into your edit pane. The promise date. You'll see that here in the ConOpen table we do have a promise date listed. That's going to return the date the collector set the promise up. So if I created a promise today, that's what's going to pull into that field if I move that over. I'm looking for the date the customer is going to pay, so that's not listed here. I know then I need to go pull in a different category. So I'm going to look in my collections category, and I'm looking for a promise, so I will scroll down to the P words, and here I have promise date and then promise by date. So, or PTP date and PTP by date. So I'm going to pull in PTP by date, and that's going to give me the result when the customer is going to make the payment. And next to that, I need the promise amount. So I will highlight that and drag it over. And then the last thing I need from the collections table is my collector ID. So I'll scroll back up and I will pull that over into the last column. Now, we can preview the report right now, and we have no formatting done, but I can see what I have out there. So if I click that preview button, which is defaulted to PDF right now, then my system is going to open another tab next to my edit tab. So you'll see I still have my edit view open. I can edit everything, but next to that, the system is processing my preview. Anytime you run a report, depending on the amount of information that you're asking the system to return to you, the length of time it takes to process or execute that report can be anywhere from a few seconds to a few minutes. I've seen some where people are asking for an immense amount of information to be returned, and it takes 5 to 10 minutes to return it. I'm talking like years worth of data all at one time. So, I mean, don't be surprised if you're waiting for the execution for a minute or two. That's okay. It's normal. You may want to adjust your filters or something like that and then try to rerun it to see if that helps limit what you have. So here's my report right now. This is the data that I have. I have an error up here. That's the first thing I notice. I have my column headers. the date and time that the report was run, and then I have my data. So I've got my contracts being returned to me. I have my customer name, that looks good. The year, make, and model, that's returning. Date sold, and then I get over here to the balance, and there's no formatting done here. So I know I need to fix that. Promise date, and then I have the promise amount, and then I have my collector. So now I can see that there's data being returned, and I can go back into my edit pane and make some adjustments. You can either X this out and close the preview, or you can leave it there, make edits, and then when you click the preview button again, the system will open a new instance to preview. So I'm going to come in here and I'm just going to start fixing my formatting. So I have no title to this report right now. So I'm going to go over here and I'm going to go into my contracts category. I'm going to pull over the company code into this field here. This is a formula that's telling the system to return the company code so that when it sorts by company 1 and then company 2 and then company 3, you'll see the division. You'll actually see company 1, company 2, company 3. So I have that in there. I just click and drag that, and then it becomes part of the formula. Now next to that, I have a section where I have some merged fields, and I can create a title to this report. So just highlight that merged field and put in your title. Make sure your fingers are typing correctly. And then that will be there for you in the center. Now, I also want my company name on this report. Anytime I create a report, I want my company information to be on it. So I'll just come back over to the contracts category. The first data field listed in the contracts table is the company name. So company name will give you the name of your company. Company code will give you the 1, 2, 3, 4, the number of the companies in your system. So I put the company name in and I lost my border line. So I'm going to go back into Format Cells and I will add that border line back in. So that's there. I also want to change my font and make that a little bigger. Alright, now I can come down and I can format the data in the report. I'm going to start over here with date sold, and what I'm going to do, I'm going to right justify the column headings. So I'm just going to highlight all of those from that point and right align them, and I'm going to do the same thing with the data fields. This way all my totals or my balances and my dates are going to be right justified. And then I need to start formatting those. So I'll go into Format Cells, click Number, and then select in this instance the date the way I want it to appear. Next to that, I'll click on the balance and then select Number in Format Cells. Add 2 decimal places. I want a $sign. And then instead of a negative symbol, if I ever have a negative number, I want that in parentheses, and I'm going to make it red. So if I have a negative number, it's going to stand out. And I'll do the same thing for the next columns. Add 2 decimals for my number. And make sure negative numbers stand out. And then your collector will be listed just as they appear. So now at this point, if I preview, I'm going to get another preview window that opens. And once my system finishes the execution process, I'll see the next preview with all my edits that we've just done. we'll wait for this to finish, and then we'll preview what we have so far. And we can see now that everything is aligned. It looks a lot cleaner. We have our balances looking like currency. The dates are all aligned and correct. And then there's our collector information. So now I could go and let's see, I have a lot of blank promise dates and a lot of accounts that don't have promises being returned, but they're in my report. So I don't need those. I strictly wanted a promise report by collector. So if there's not a promise set, I don't need that account in this report. So I know at this point I can go back into my report, come into my report options, and go back to my filters, and then I can create a new filter to take care of the information I don't want in the report. So I'll come back over to collections, and I'll scroll down until I find my promise date, or actually I'll go by promise amount. I'm going to drag that over, and I'm going to say the promise amount is greater than 0. Then I can click OK, and I could preview this again, and we'll see if we get only the reports that have a balance or a promise amount. Now, what you may find when you're doing filters is that you select maybe the wrong identifier. So instead of greater than, you maybe needed to say greater than or equal to. There's a lot of trial and error. You can just continue to work with your filters until you get used to building the reports, and then it will become easier for you to know which identifier to use in the list when you're filtering. So here we will have now only the promises that had a promise amount attached to them. So nothing, if somebody clicked promise rather than the hold callback button, so those will all be excluded. So you'll just see accounts that have promises set with the promise amounts in them. If you notice my vehicle information, town and country, that's a long year, make, and model. It's a lot of car info. So if I wanted, I could go back into the edit view and extend my column for the vehicle information to get that all on one line. So if that bothers you, you can always do that. But now we have the information we need. We have the collectors listed, and we could now save our report. And then the next time we go in the system or when we exit here, we can run that report. I could schedule this so my collections managers or collectors see this every day. And that way we'll have a good report to show who's setting promises and how much those promises are for, and when they're being set, how long they're letting people pay, etc. So you save your report and then click close. When you close the report, I do want to let you know that you're going to be directed to the sign-in page. And that's because Insight, for security reasons, will only allow you to be working in the system or be active for 15 minutes or so at a time. So you've saved your information. You're not going to lose it. But when you close the report, you're going to have to sign back in. So just be aware of that. When you do sign back in and you're on the main landing page, you can click in your folder and your report will appear. You can see our new titles there, the description, and then I can run this and I will get the returned results I'm asking for.